We have been working in the Foundations of Worship series. Has my wife not been doing an unbelievably bang-up job? Come on, give her a little... This is in part because I know she absolutely hates this, and so I'm going to do it even more. And I also just want to recognize she's phenomenal. She can do everything, man. It's absolutely awesome. But with that said, I'm happy to be back in the saddle with you today. And I'm really looking forward to talking about a few things. The Lord really laid something on my heart that I didn't want to tell you. So I have to tell you because he told me to. So are you all ready? Good. Foundations of worship. It's awesome that we sang the song this morning, I'm coming back to a heart of worship, and it's all about you, Jesus. You know, in modern times and in days like today, worship really has been emphasized as an event. It's something that we come together on a Sunday morning, and worship ends up being a segment of differing segments in a church service. And it has been relegated to being an event where when we show up, actually before I do this, hey, Matt, you're working on an iPad. Come up here and turn off my screensaver so that I don't have to mess with it. That's what I was looking for. You were looking for it? Yeah. Anybody else? No, Matt. I'll figure it out. Jesse knows how. Give this man a round of applause. You guys take care of it. Bring it back to me. Don't write anything extra into my sermon that I don't want to preach. Jesse is a handsome man. Stuff like that. But we're family here. I don't care. I'm easygoing. This is totally fine for me. Worship has been relegated to becoming an event. It's something that we go to do. It's something that we are a part of in a morning service. And bar none, across every denominational line you can think of, worship includes music of some kind. It doesn't matter if you're Pentecostal, Baptist, Baptist-costal. It doesn't matter if you're a Methodist, a Baptist, a Metho-Baptist. It doesn't matter if you are a non-denominational church or just a Baptist church with a really cool website that claims to be a non-denominational church. It does not matter. There will be music. Even the Church of Christ people, they have music. They may not be playing instruments. Well, some of them do. That's the strange thing there, too, because some of them do the a cappella thing, right? And then some of them have the a cappella service early, and then later on they have the musical instruments. And you're going, what? But no matter where you go, you have music of some sort and some kind included in the worship service. Why is that? Number one, because we love our music. Can I get an amen? We absolutely love music. And we classify our music portion of a morning service as our worship. But people, worship is a whole lot more than that. Yes. But before I get to that, I want to make this point to you. I want to give you a true picture of how important music is to not only American culture, but to the modern day church. Rewind the clock back with me, if you would, back to the late 90s, early 2000s. Everyone has to change their wardrobe. Somebody needs to be wearing a sweater vest without sleeves in order for us to truly be back in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. To give you a picture, all right, say you had a full, like a pie graph of music, and every slice of the pie represented the amount of music sold in an area. Okay? Country music. How many country music fans do we have in the house this morning? Yeah. Do you know I knew you were country music? Because if I said rock and roll, everyone would be like, yeah! When I say country, just raise your hand. That's all it takes. Country music back in the late 90s, early 2000s made up about 15% of all sales in music. Country music is huge in the United States. It's also huge in Canada. It's huge. It's so huge that we pulled a guy from Australia to come over here and do country music for us. And he's pretty dang good at it. To give you a better picture of this, if 10,000 CDs, if 10,000 CDs, this is how I got to give you the picture. I say MP3, I'm, what? If 10,000 CDs represented the total market of music sold, if it did, then 1,500 of the sold CDs would be country music. Think about that, just to give you a reference. If 10,000 were the total, 1,500 would be country music. That is a big slice of the pie. Let me drive this home to you. Here's the shocker. Christian music at that time made up 8% of the pie. So that means that if you had 10,000 CDs, 800 of them were Christian music that were sold. Now I want you to think about how niche of a market Christian music is, how specific that market is, all right, and how broad the market of country music is. And country music made up 15%, Christian music made up 8%. We dominated more than half of the all sales of music in competition with country music across the United States. That's how important music is to us. We value music at a very high level. This is one of the reasons that when you walk in on a Sunday morning, we have, because music is really, why such a big chunk? Because we love it. We love music. Does God love music? Yes, he does. We love music. But let me ask you a question. Now brace yourselves. Everyone, take it easy. Just take a deep breath. Let me ask you this question. How much of church music actually equals worship? I want you to think about it. We're not trying to go negative here. I just want you to truly engage and think how much of church music actually is geared towards worship and how much of it is geared towards just producing good music. It's a good question. Here's a poll. I want to take a quick poll. Do not raise your hand. This is called rhetorical question poll. Always, it's me. Don't do that, okay? There's always that one person, oh yeah, that's me, I'm going to own up to that. Don't do that, okay? This is a in your mind rhetorical question poll. I want you to think about this, okay? When attending a church, have you ever found yourself making one of these types of statements ever? Oh, the worship wasn't very good today. I just didn't really like the worship today. I wasn't really moved during our worship service today. Or, man, that worship really moved me. Really moved me. Number 3, worship was okay. It was okay. Their worship is okay. It's not bad. It's okay. All right? This is all churches, not just ours, all churches. Number 4, that church's worship was terrible. Just when I came out, my ears were bleeding. I couldn't stand it. Or, my goodness, that was the best worship I have ever been a part of. Ever in my life. It was the best. I want you to think about that. Have you ever found yourself saying a statement like that? And not too long ago, I asked 2 questions concerning how our worship, or no, I didn't actually. I skipped it because I didn't have here. Let me explain real quick and ask these questions. How much of our music, what we do in a worship service, is for God? And how much of what we do in a worship service, our music, is for us? How much is there really the balance between the two? Is it for the Lord or is it for us? Another way of asking these questions is this, pertaining to the poll that I just took. The statements that we made, are these statements concerned with how our worship moves God's heart, or are those statements concerned on how our worship impacts our heart? Is it about touching Him, Or is it about touching us? Should be, yeah. And oftentimes it can be. I want to stir us to think this morning. Because when we make statements that are saying, when we evaluate someone's worship, what we are doing is we are casting a judgment on an offering that was never intended for us, but is given to him.
Come on, say it again.
I couldn't even if I tried. I got it written down somewhere, but I don't have my notes, and this is kind of awkward for me. In essence, without realizing it, we judge other people's offering to God based on how it impacts us. It was never meant for you. It was never meant for me. It was meant for him. And once we capture the understanding of that what we bring to the Lord as an offering is not about us, but about him, God will show up. That's the way it goes. Do you know, listen, there's a woman named Ruth Heflin, God bless her. She's gone on to be with the Lord now, I believe. Ruth Heflin was tone deaf. If she sang, it would offend your senses so greatly that you might fall out on the ground just to get away from it. It was bad, really bad. But that woman knew how to get a hold of God. And I'm telling you, this is it's one of the things that has stuck in my mind so greatly, dealing with the understanding of the basics and foundations of worship. Whew! That woman would come into a meeting and she would wait on Jesus. And it would just be about Jesus. She didn't get up to speak until she felt the release from the Lord and what the Lord wanted her to say. She would not do it. That woman would get up and she would whistle. People she couldn't even whistle onto. True story. She would whistle off tune. I don't know how you do that. You've got to be really super talented to whistle off tune. She whistled off tune. But the Lord delighted so much in her offering because it wasn't for them. It was for him. The Lord delighted so much in her offering that he would show up in such glory that people couldn't stand. His presence would fill the house, and the weight of the glory, the kabod of God, would come into the house. The weight in her weight would fill up so strong that they would crumble underneath the glory of the Lord showing up in the house. From a woman who couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. Because it wasn't about music. It was about worship. And I didn't really like hearing her whistle either. She whistled off too. It messes with, and if you have an ear to hear music, it'll mess with you. But God delighted in it. Because it wasn't for us, it was for him. Oftentimes I find if it moves us, we believe it's awesome. But how many of us take the time to ask the question, Jesus, does this move your heart? Does it move you? Does it capture your attention? Do your eyes fix on me when I sing your song? Do what I offer, is it an offering that pleases you? Can you turn this down a bit? I'm getting really bad feedback. Thank you. In Genesis 22, God asks Abraham a question. It's a question that we don't understand. I guarantee you Abraham probably didn't get either. Maybe he did. I don't know. He's Abraham. But he asks him a question. He says, Abraham, I want you to sacrifice your son Isaac. I want you to give your only son to me. Now you need to understand, Abraham has been waiting for the promise of the Lord that God gave him and said that your seed will be like the sand of the seashore and as the stars in the sky. And he waited a long time to the point where he didn't want to wait anymore. And he finally had a different child named Ishmael with Hagar, his maidservant. And then God comes in with the promise that he gave him, gives him Isaac, which means laughter. And Isaac gets born decade or so after the promise is given, and he's 100 years old having a baby. God have mercy. So he has the child of promise, this one child. He doesn't believe he's going to have another. And God says, I want you to take your son, and I want you to take him up where you offer offerings, and I want you to sacrifice him to me. This don't make no sense. It does not compute. It does not. If you've given me a promise stating that I'm going to have descendants as numerous as the sand grains on the seashore, why are you asking me to take out, as a burnt offering nonetheless, the only son that you have provided to me? This doesn't make any sense. And God said, I want you to do this. And look at what it says in verse 1 and 2. It says, now it came about after these things that God tested Abraham. There it is. Tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And Abraham said, here I am. He said, take now your son, your only son. God recognizes it. It's not like he's trying to pussyfoot over it or to cover it. He recognizes it. Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains to which I will tell you. And in this passage, Desiree made allusion to, not maybe last week or the week before, in this passage, we have the first use of the word worship. He said, son, let us go up to worship the Lord. Now, I want you to think about this. In our culture today, if we preach this to people out in the outdoors, they're like, God wanted to do what? He wanted to kill? That doesn't compute to my mind. Yeah, it doesn't, because he's God and we're not. And when he says to do something, there's a reason beyond our understanding of what it is. But in this moment, Abraham chose to obey rather than to question. And so here he goes. He takes him up. And if you don't know the story, it's real simple. He takes him up onto the mountain, ties him up. Isaac's 33 years old. And he goes, hey, I see the fire and I see all this other stuff, but where's the sacrifice? And Abraham's like, I'm sorry, son. You're it. Ties him down, gets ready to burn him. And as he's going to do here comes an angel. Abraham, stop what you were doing. God has provided another way. And there's a ram stuck in the thicket. He goes over and he offers a different. People, that story has nothing to do, even though it's a picture of Jesus being offered later on. I get that. But the test was not whether or not he would kill his son. The test was whether or not he would obey God. See, here's the deal. God is all about devotion. And this is what happened. And this definitely applies to us in today's culture. God gave Abraham, a promise. And he said, I have a promise for your life. And I'm going to give you a son, and I'm going to give you descendants, and I'm going to give you a tremendous testimony of your life throughout generations to come. And what God was testing in that moment wasn't if Abraham would kill his son or not. It was whether or not the promise that God had given, if that promise had replaced God in Abraham's heart. Because Abraham sat and said, or God sat and said, I've given him the promise, he's received that. Now does he delight in the promise that I've given him more than he delights in me? And so here's the test. Will you be devoted to me? Will your devotion exceed that which even you know I've given you a promise? And in the face of that promise being taken away from you, will you still serve me? See, God's all about devotion, and we're all about music. I'll say it one more time. God's all about devotion, and we have a tendency to be all about music. And if the music's good, we say the worship is good. And if the music is bad, we say other stuff. But the reality is, God's looking for our heart devotion to him more than he's looking for our skills and talents on our instruments. Now, that's not to say God's not into excellence, because he is. And that's not to say that God's not into pageantry. He made a giant gold box that people had to carry around. He likes pageantry. He does. But more than any of that, he's interested in your heart. Does he have your heart? Does he have your devotion? Did the provision and promise that God provided replace Abraham's affection and devotion to God? That's my question for us this morning. I'm going to have to skip over some stuff for the sake of time, but can I get real with you this morning? I know that I don't need your permission to do it. I understand that. But what I'm about to say, I'm about to get real, and I want to know that I have it. Good enough, Kenny. Thank you. Somewhere along the way, at varying points of severity, in different areas of church life, we have adopted a mindset of a consumer in our approach to church. And even more than that, we've adopted a mindset of being a consumer in our approach to being a part of the body of Christ. What do I mean by that? It's this simple. Church offers us a product, and we decide whether or not we like this product. If we like this product, we stay. The moment we no longer like this product, we leave and go shopping for another product that pleases us. I know I'm not making friends right now. It's okay. That is where we have gone to as a society, in large part. But I have a better question. How about instead of us looking for what we like, how about we ask Jesus what we're supposed to do and where we're supposed to be? How about we make it about his leadership instead of ours? I got enough time. Let me tell you a story. There's a story, Desiree and I, and I'm sorry, I'm probably going to get choked up a little bit, but Desiree and I got called by the Lord to go to a place called Wynne, Arkansas. I love you guys if you're watching it. Don't be offended by what I'm about to say. Desiree and I got called to go to a place called Wynne, Arkansas. I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. I was a young man. We were extremely talented at the time. At least we thought so. We've learned a little more since then. We had a job offer in North Carolina near Raleigh-Durham, which was like the dream job for us to go to, larger church. And out of respect for Desiree's grandmother, we went to check out this little tiny church in the podunk town of Wynne, Arkansas that had 8,500 people, and I'm pretty sure they counted 2,000 cats and dogs. And it was in the back of nowhere, and it was a geographical oddity. Everything of civilization was an hour away. And no matter what direction you went in, everything was an hour away. An hour to an hour and a half away. And we showed up in town, and my wife had a panic attack. Because she said, "Oh, Jesus, no. Please, no. Oh, if you love me, if you only love me, don't send me here." And I came in, and we had a job offer and an interview like 2 days later in California. And we had a job offer that I was sitting upon in North Carolina that I did not say yes to out of respect for her grandmother. And we go to Wynne, Arkansas, and Jesus says, "Go to Wynne." And in my mind, I said, this is a career killer. It was what you would classify as a problem church. They had had how many pastors? They had gone through, in a decade, they'd gone through a lot of pastors, and none of them seemed to really leave on a good foot. And it was always something that they did wrong, and they'd leave and they'd be wounded and have to pick themselves up. And it really had gained the reputation in its community as a church-killing thing. And the Lord said, "Go here." To which I said, "Do you really love me, Jesus? You want me to go where?" And so I turned. Here's the thing. I don't want to go here. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'm going from a city of 3 million to a city of 8,500 where the culture is totally different. I sound different than they do, and they make sure that I know it. No kidding. One of my favorite kids, he's not a kid anymore, he's like 26, but one of my favorite people in the world, the first time that I met him, he spoke these words, "Y'all need to work on y'all's accent." And then he said nothing for 3 months to me. That was all he said, and then he never spoke to me again for 3 months. For the first 3 months that we were there, he didn't say a word to me. He had made up his mind. I sounded like a Yankee, and he didn't want anything to do with me. That's what the Lord called us to. And I had great opportunities and great career moves that I could have made. And the Lord said, "Geoff, go to win." I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it at all. But I knew I had one choice. It's to say yes to him. And I had to say yes to his plan because he is master. And there is no point in me calling him master if I'm not going to follow him. And so I took this beautiful lady into the backwoods for 6.5 years. And we served faithfully a congregation where half of them didn't like us, the other half did. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe it's 80-20 split. I don't know. Who knows? And I didn't understand it. And I'm telling you, I didn't handle it perfectly. There were friends I was calling, and I was like, "Oh, God, pray that the Lord takes me away from..." I had temptations offered my way. I had guys, we were doing fairly well there. I had guys call me up and offer me positions at bigger churches at different parts, and I had to tell them no because the Lord called me to win Arkansas. And I didn't know why. I didn't understand it. I knew this, though. My worship in that moment wasn't my song, it was my devotion. And my worship in that moment wasn't an event, it was my life. Because we have been called, according to Romans chapter 12, verse 2, to be living sacrifices, which is our reasonable act of worship. Because worship is meant to be a lifestyle, not just an event. The events that take place are an outflow of the life that we live of worship to God. In that moment, we chose obedience. Well, no, that's obedience, isn't it? No, obedience is worship. Obedience is an expression of love, and it's worship to the Lord. John 15, Jesus says, "If you love me, you will obey my commands." It is an expression of love. It is something we get to do, but it is absolutely worship. And in that moment, both of us chose to serve a congregation and love them because Jesus wanted it. It wasn't about me, it wasn't about her. It was about him. Do you know that out of that congregation right now, I think we have 3 or 4 kids that are in ministry that are absolutely changing the world? We have a spiritual son of ours that's in Corpus Christi, Texas, that is part of a church plant that's probably 3,000 people big. We have another spiritual son that came out of that that's serving as a campus missionary at a college that's serving his campus to win people for Jesus for this next generation. We have people that went to International House of Prayer to become prayer missionaries. That happened because we said yes. God needed that and wanted that. And our yes empowered that to take place. Imagine what would have happened if we said no. They're impacting the kingdom probably way more than we are. But our impact in them led them to impact others. Why am I telling you this? Here's the point. Jesus didn't call people to like him. He called people to follow him. He didn't call people to like him. He called people to follow him. And he went up to 12 strangers that he did not know, looked them in the eye and said, "Follow me." He didn't say, "Like me." He didn't say, "Agree with everything that I'm doing." He said, "Follow me." And somewhere along the way, church and our culture has become about what we like and not who we follow. Now, that's a broad statement. I don't want that to come across the wrong way. Not in every arena and every area, but in varying positions at varying points, it has become about what we like rather than who we follow. I'm coming back to a heart of worship that's all about you. You see, he said heart of worship. It's the devotion that you have. I'm out of time. I know it. And boy, I have a whole lot more to say. Maybe next week, who knows? If you don't know, I'll end on this. If you don't know the story of Matt Redman writing the song Heart of Worship, this is how it happened. Matt Redman was in England at a church serving as a worship pastor. And his pastor came up to him and said, Matt, now he's a worship leader. He said, Matt, I want you to lead worship for the next year without using any music. I'm a worship pastor. Music is what I do. And he said, yeah, but music is not the only means by which we worship the Lord. So I am eliminating music from our congregation for a year. And I want you to lead us into worship. Needless to say, the man needed the gift of creativity. He got frustrated. He got angry. He got bitter at times. And then he realized we rely on music as a means to worship him more than we are actually focusing on worshiping him. Because music creates a feeling, and when we feel that feeling, we're satisfied. But when that music euphoria is removed, Jesus is still the same Jesus. And Jesus still needs to be worshipped as the same Jesus he has always been. And he found a way to worship him without using music to bless his name. And that's where that song, when the music fades and all is stripped away, and I simply come, longing to bring something that's of worth to bless you. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you require. You search deeper within than the way things appear. You're looking into my heart, because it's not just an event. It's our very lives that we bring to him. And that is worship. And there is, listen, you want to know how much you're worth? Jesus gave himself, blood and all, for the sake of saving you. And he's calling us to return the favor and live a life of sacrifice and surrender as a means of worshiping him. Can I get an amen?